Truistery Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
Truistery Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Ethan Carter stood at the front of the glass-walled boardroom on the 32nd floor of the Meridian Tower, his tailored navy suit unwrinkled and his gray tie knotted precisely. He took a steadying breath as the last slide of his presentation, Q4 Growth Strategy, Beyond the Plateau, animated onto the screen behind him. The room, filled with senior executives and department heads, was silent for a heartbeat before applause rippled through the rows of leather-backed chairs. "Outstanding work, Ethan," said Marissa Lang, the company's chief operating officer, leaning forward in her seat. "Your projections are aggressive, but the roadmap is clear. Well done." He allowed himself a small, relieved smile as he clicked off his clicker and stepped away from the lectern. Sales forecasts, expansion blueprints, digital transformation milestones. He had covered it all in 20 minutes flat. He greeted nods and thumbs up with practiced grace, feeling the tension ease from his shoulders even as his pulse still throbbed from the adrenaline rush. "Coffee or water?" offered Jeff Morales, the head of marketing, standing at the side table where baristas were stationed behind a silver urn. Ethan shook his head and reached instead for his smartphone. It was 6:02 p.m. Exactly the time he'd promised his wife, Chloe Bennett, he'd be home. She'd let him know that she was planning to cook together tonight, a rare midweek ritual they both treasured. "Ethan," Marissa's voice called him back gently. "We're heading to the Oak Room for dinner to celebrate. I hope you'll join us." The Oak Room, one of San Francisco's more exclusive venues. All mahogany panels, vintage crystal chandeliers, and a prix-fixe menu that started at $125. It was designed to impress clients and to reward high performers like Ethan. He stole a glance at his watch again. He'd battled BART delays on his commute, stayed late rehearsing, and barely squeezed in this presentation. Chloe was counting on him tonight. "I really appreciate the invitation," he said, stepping forward. "But I promised my wife I'd be home by 6, and I can't break that promise." A polite murmur rippled around the table. Marissa paused, eyebrow arched in surprise but not annoyance. "Family first, I get it. Maybe next time." "Next time for sure," Ethan replied, offering a reassuring smile. A few colleagues, Jeff among them, exchanged looks. In the world of big tech and high-stakes sales, leaving early for a home-cooked meal was almost unheard of, especially on the heels of a major win. But Ethan didn't budge. He gathered his laptop, his presentation notes swept into the leather portfolio case he carried, and made his way toward the door. The click of his dress shoes on the polished marble floor echoed louder than usual. As he passed the baristas, one of them tucked a takeaway cup of herbal tea into his briefcase. "For you, chamomile," she said with a knowing smile. "Calms the hustle." Ethan's shoulders sagged just a fraction. "Thanks, Sarah. You're a lifesaver." He stepped into the corridor, the rush of cool evening air whispering through the floor-to-ceiling windows as he approached the elevator bank. In the reflection of the chrome doors, he saw his own face, sharp jawline, thoughtful brown eyes, and a hint of apprehension. Once he reached the lobby, he waved off the doorman's offer to hail a town car. "Uber's fine," he said, tapping his app. 5 minutes later, a charcoal Prius pulled up. He slid into the back seat, scanning the cityscape as they merged onto Van Ness Avenue. Streetlights stretched into a glowing ribbon, cable cars rattling overhead. In traffic, he texted Chloe. "Presentation went great. I'm on my way home. Be there in 10. He remembered the first time he and Chloe had tried cooking together. It was 6 months into their marriage. Spaghetti carbonara that ended up more scrambled egg than silky sauce. The kitchen a riot of flour footprints. But they had laughed until they cried. And that memory had become the anchor of a tradition neither wanted to lose. The GPS announced a left turn onto Pacific Avenue. Ethan felt his phone buzz with a flurry of congratulatory messages from colleagues. "Rockstar performance. You should have stayed. Dinner? My treat next time. He thanked them, but kept his eyes on the passing buildings. When the car rounded the corner onto Maple Street, he glimpsed the warm glow of their living room windows. Chloe's apartment in No Valley was small, just 2 bedrooms in a remodeled Victorian, but to Ethan it was the coziest place in the world. As the Prius pulled up in front, he noticed the potted herb garden by the entryway, basil and rosemary in cheerful bloom. He stepped out, paid the driver, and jogged up the 2 steps to the front door. It was locked. He removed his key fob, unlocked it, and stepped inside. The soft golden light of the pendant lamp above the kitchen island bathed the room in a welcoming glow. The counter was set with 2 plates and a vase of daisies. Chloe Bennett rounded the corner, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her dark curls were pinned back. She wore an apron dusted with flour, and her smile lit up his heart. "Hey, you made it," she said, stepping into his arms. Ethan inhaled the scent of garlic and olive oil. Face first into the corporate world all day. And I get to come home here. I wouldn't trade it for any 5-star dinner. She nestled against him, brushing a kiss across his cheek. "Let's get started, Chef Carter." As they turned toward the stove together, Ethan felt every bit as proud of his decision, choosing home, choosing Chloe, as he had of every deal he'd ever closed. Because some victories, he knew, were worth more than any corporate gala. Ethan washed off the last of his workday tension as he parked the Prius just outside their No Valley Victorian. He double-checked his watch. 6:12 p.m. perfect, still within the window he'd promised. Clutching his briefcase and the chamomile tea Sarah had slipped him, he bounded up the 2 wooden steps, unlocked the door, and called out, "Honey, I'm home." He set the teacup on the kitchen island. The room smelled warm and inviting, garlic sizzling in olive oil, a hint of fresh basil, and the faint tang of simmering tomatoes. He glanced at the stove. 2 skillets sat side by side. One held al dente fettuccine in a creamy Alfredo sauce, the other, vibrant roasted Brussels sprouts with lemon zest. The table was laid in a casual elegance, mismatched ceramic plates, cloth napkins, and a single candle flickering at center. "Chloe," he called again, slipping off his jacket. "Dinner smells amazing." No answer. He rounded the counter. The living room was empty, save for a few half-packed shopping bags spilling onto the rug, designer scarves, whimsical stationery sets, an artfully folded silk blouse. His chest tightened. Something wasn't right. He strode into the adjacent hallway. A soft glow spilled from the bedroom at the end. He peered in. Chloe sat cross-legged on the bed, her phone in hand, scrolling. Her apron lay discarded on the floor, her hair brushed straightened and loose around her shoulders. In her meticulously styled outfit and fresh manicure, she looked more ready for a boutique opening than a cozy night in. "Hey," Ethan said gently, stepping into the doorway. "Dinner's getting cold." Chloe didn't look up. She muttered without conviction. His stomach sank. He set his briefcase on the floor and sat beside her. "Everything okay?" She paused her scrolling, finally meeting his eyes. "Oh yeah, it's fine." "Is it work? Late email?" He rested a hand on her knee. "I told Marissa I'd be home. I really wanted this night." Chloe shifted away. "You left early. You missed half my prep. That's on you." He frowned, confused. "I was here before 6:30. I said I'd be." She shrugged. "You said by 6. That's one thing. But you didn't help chop vegetables or stir the sauce like you promised." He blew out a breath. "Honestly, I was wrapping up Q4 KPIs in my head all day. But as soon as I cleared my mind..." Chloe cut him off. "You always say that." He stared. "I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm here now. Come help me plate." She stood. "I'll eat later." She slipped off the bed, smoothed her skirt, and walked out of the room without another word. Ethan watched her go, stunned. He rose and carried the skillets to the dining table. He arranged pasta first, then roasted sprouts, garnishing each plate with a fresh basil leaf. He poured 2 glasses of sparkling water, one for each of them. He arranged the candle, lit it, and sat down. Minutes ticked by. The pasta cooled. The sprouts wilted. The water went still. He finally stood and ambled toward the living room again. "Chloe?" No answer. He moved to the front door and called. "Hey, are you all right?" No footsteps. He opened the door. The hallway beyond was empty, a faint echo of her shower earlier. He checked every room, breathing faster now. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Chloe_Bennett. "Sorry, babe. Ran into a friend. Be home soon." He rubbed his temples. "A friend," he muttered. Then he saw it. The distinctive purple shopping bag from Bloom & Bee. That was Lily's shop. Chloe had popped out again in the middle of cooking. He swallowed the lump in his throat and returned inside. By the time she actually returned, 7:05 p.m., Ethan had tucked into his portion of pesto-spiked pasta, leaving a single forkful on the side of the plate, as if saving the last bite for her. She stepped in quietly, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She paused in the entryway, taking in the remnants of the abandoned dinner. He cleared his throat. "You okay? Hungry?" She shrugged, dropping her purse by the door. "Is that dinner?" He nodded. "I thought you'd be back sooner." I finished instead of letting it go. He cut off as she slid into the chair across from him. Her posture was formal, arms folded like a guarded fortress. "I got another text from Marissa," she said flatly. "They invited me to a gallery opening next week." Ethan blinked. "You want to go?" "I will, unless you want to come." She narrowed her eyes. "I thought you didn't have time for these things." He picked up the edge of a napkin, crumpled it. "I'm sorry." "Look, if you want to go out." He gestured at the half-eaten meal. "Dinner's here. We can finish it together." Chloe snorted. "No thanks. I'm not hungry." He swallowed. "Can I at least talk?" She sighed heavily and sat back. "Make it quick." He set down his fork. "I know I messed up tonight. I left work early to make dinner special. Missing half the prep wasn't your fault. I'm sorry I gave you the impression I don't care about what you want." Her jaw tightened. "It's not just tonight, Ethan. It's every night. You're always putting something or someone else first." He drew in a breath. "I'm under a lot of pressure, but you're my partner. I should have done better." She looked away. "I wanted us to spend time together. You said you did too." He reached across the table. They stared at each other for a moment, the unspoken tension crackling like static. Her phone beeped. She glanced down. It was a direct message from an old college friend. Ethan recognized his name. Jake Monroe, the same guy she'd reconnected with last month over social media. Chloe's eyes flicked back up to Ethan. "Just a quick catch-up. I need some adult conversation that isn't about KPIs or server uptime." Something in her tone stung him. "Adult conversation," he repeated softly. "We're adults, Chloe." She leaned back. "Sometimes I feel like we're roommates with a really nice kitchen." He exhaled. "Is this," he pointed at the stir-fry, at the pristine table setting, "what this relationship is? Nice on the surface, but cold underneath." Chloe's shoulders slumped. She looked at the untouched pasta and wilted sprouts. "I thought it would mean more, Ethan. But I waited an hour for you. That seems to matter less than whatever boardroom victory you racked up." He swallowed hard. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The silence stretched. Finally, Chloe stood. "I'm going out." She grabbed her jacket. He wanted to protest, but he found himself nodding wordlessly, defeated. Her heels clicked on the hardwood as she exited through the front door. He heard the car pull away, the soft hum of the engine fading. Then absolute quiet. Ethan sat alone at the table, staring at the single plate still half full. The candle had melted down halfway. He picked up the glass of water and sipped, eyes stinging with regret. He realized that, for all his corporate triumphs, this dinner with Chloe was a victory he couldn't afford to lose. The one place he could call home was slipping away. He stood, gathered the abandoned plates, and carried them to the sink. The hiss of the faucet sounded thunderous in his ears as he began to wash. Each dish he scrubbed felt like an attempt at penance, an acknowledgement that Sometimes, the simple promise of "I'll be home at 6" was the hardest one of all to keep. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of the No Valley Victorian, casting soft rectangles across the worn hardwood floor. Ethan Carter woke to an empty apartment and the hollow quiet that followed Chloe's late-night departure. He ran a hand through his hair, replaying last night's painful exchange in his mind. He found Chloe's half-used coffee mug in the sink and set it aside. There was a folded note taped to the refrigerator. "I need some time and space. We need to talk, soon." Heart suit, no signature. Ethan's chest tightened. Not knowing where Chloe was only deepened the ache. Before he could dwell on it, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother, Linda Carter. "Son, I'm coming by for lunch today. Let's talk." He exhaled. Lunch with Linda always meant heart-to-heart conversations, and Linda had a well-honed sixth sense for marital strife. He typed back a simple "see you at noon," and then zipped out to the car. At exactly noon, Ethan pulled into his mother's driveway in Marin County. The house was a modest craftsman with a wraparound porch and a riot of spring flowers. Linda was already waiting on the front steps, arms crossed, but eyes full of concern. "I know you," she said before he could speak. "You're in crisis mode." He managed a wry smile. "You're right." She ushered him inside. The aroma of roast chicken and rosemary drifted from the kitchen. Linda guided him to the sunlit dining room table, where 2 plates of her famous chicken salad sandwiches and iced tea waited. He sat, his shoulders hunched. Words tumbled out in a rush. The aborted dinner, Chloe's attitude, the message from Jake Monroe, and finally, the note on the fridge. Linda listened without interruption, nodding, her expression serious. When he finished, she reached across the table and took his hand. "Do you still love her?" she asked quietly. He closed his eyes. He swallowed. "I don't know. I love the idea of us. I love home. But I can't keep wrestling with constant rejection." Linda leaned back. "And what does Chloe want?" She said she needs space. "She's not even answering my calls or texts." "You need to have a clear conversation, Ethan. No more assumptions. Sit down together, set ground rules. If she's truly checked out, let her be honest." He nodded. "I'll try." That evening, Ethan returned to San Francisco and texted Chloe, "Can we meet?" At the office conference room? 7 p.m. tonight. He hesitated but sent it. She replied almost immediately, "Yes. See you there." He arrived at the lightly occupied office building just before 7, the hallway echoing his footsteps. He settled at a long boardroom table, his portfolio open but untouched. A few minutes later, Chloe slipped in, her expression composed but distant. "Hi," Ethan began, voice catching. "Thanks for coming." Chloe folded her arms, gaze steady. "I'm just here to talk." He nodded. "I called Mom. She suggested we lay everything on the table. So, this is me. I feel disconnected, unappreciated. I want a partner, not a roommate." Chloe unclenched her hands. "Ethan, I know I've been cold. I love my independence. I hate feeling controlled. But I can't keep pretending everything is fine if it's not." He leaned forward. "So, where do we stand?" She sighed, exhaling a small tremor. "I tried. I really did. But last night when I texted you, I realized something. I've been unhappy here for a while. I keep looking for an exit instead of talking about it. I owe you more honesty." His throat tightened. "You're saying you want a separation?" Chloe's eyes glistened. "Yes. I think we should get a divorce." Silence. The word landed between them like a final clap of thunder. Ethan closed his eyes. "If that's truly what you want, I won't stand in your way." She blinked back tears. "I'm sorry." He ran a hand over his face. "No, I'm sorry." They sat in silence as the glow from the ceiling light reflected on the polished wood. Ethan finally opened his portfolio and removed 2 blank copies of a separation agreement he'd downloaded earlier that day, a practical step he never imagined he'd take. "I drafted this," he said softly, placing the papers before her. It's basic. You and I sign, legal part follows. We split assets evenly. No blame. Chloe nodded, voice barely above a whisper. That sounds fair. He slid a pen across the table. I don't want us to fight over this. I want an amicable divorce. Tears slipped down Chloe's cheeks. She took the pen and signed, her hand shaking. Ethan signed beneath hers. They sat back, the weight of the moment settling over them. The room felt colder now that the decision was made. Chloe stood. I should go. Ethan stood too. He swallowed. Goodbye, Chloe. Goodbye, Ethan. She left without looking back. Ethan lingered in the empty boardroom long after Chloe departed. The papers lay on the table like tombstones marking the end of their marriage. He picked them up and placed them carefully in his portfolio, tangible proof of a promise kept and a love acknowledged even in its collapse. As he closed the door behind him, he realized that, in losing this marriage, he was also opening himself to something new. Painful, yes, but perhaps, in time, necessary for growth. The hum of the city beyond the windows reminded him, life moves forward, even when hearts break. And so, with a final look at the silent conference table, Ethan stepped out into the corridor, ready to face whatever came next. The morning after finalizing the divorce papers, Ethan Carter woke to an empty apartment and the hollow echo of Chloe's absence. He showered without thinking, dressed in jeans and a soft gray sweater, and grabbed his car keys. He needed a distraction, a place where deadlines and legal forms couldn't follow him. He drove north across the Bay Bridge, the city's skyline fading behind him, until the freeway spat him out onto Broadway in Oakland. He turned onto Grand Avenue, where a riot of storefronts, coffee roasters, vintage boutiques, and murals lined the street. He parked outside a modest shop with a mint green facade and a hand-painted sign that read, Petal and Stem Florals. He'd first noticed it months ago during his commute, but never stopped. Today, he needed something living and beautiful, a splash of color to remind him life could still bloom. Ethan stepped inside. The doorbell tinkled, and a warm aroma of freshly cut roses and eucalyptus enveloped him. Sunlight streamed through the front window, illuminating rows of bouquets artfully arranged on wooden crates. Wildflowers, peonies, sunflowers, and delicate white lilies created a living mosaic. Behind the counter, a woman paused mid-prune. She was reaching for a sprig of lavender, her auburn hair tied loosely at the nape of her neck. She wore a simple teal apron dusted with pollen. Bright, curious green eyes met Ethan's. Welcome to Petal and Stem, she said with a gentle smile. Looking for anything in particular? Ethan cleared his throat. Hi. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm going through a rough patch, and I thought flowers might help. She tilted her head sympathetically. I'm Lily on mission. She extended a hand. Everyone needs a little color in life sometimes. Grief, stress, heartbreak, it all comes in different seasons. He shook her hand, surprised by her warmth. I'm Metan. He gestured to the bouquets. What would you recommend? Lily stepped closer, guiding him among the blooms. For healing, I usually suggest peonies or tulips, something resilient. But for new beginnings, sunflowers are perfect. They always face the sun. Ethan studied a bouquet of bright sunflowers with their bold, golden petals. He reached out and touched one gently. These feel hopeful. Exactly, Lily said. And if you want something more subtle, these white lysianthus speak of fresh starts. She pulled a handful of lysianthus stems and arranged them in a slender glass vase. As she worked, Ethan watched her nimble fingers and the calm focus in her eyes. Tell me about your season, she prompted softly as she tied the bouquet with twine. Ethan hesitated, then found himself opening up. I just got divorced. Thought I had it all, career, home, marriage. Then poof, it fell apart. Lily set the finished arrangement in front of him. I'm sorry, Ethan. That's a hard season to weather. He nodded, heart unexpectedly heavy. I came here to feel something different, to hold on to something alive. She offered him the vase. Keep these on your windowsill. Change the water every few days. Watch them grow or wilt. It's all part of the process. You're allowed to grieve and to heal. He picked up the bouquet and inhaled the soft scent of fresh greenery. Thank you, Lily. I really appreciate it. Lily smiled. You're welcome. And hey, if you ever want to help arrange, I'll teach you. Flowers have a lot to teach us about resilience. He laughed, a genuine sound. I might take you up on that. As he walked toward the door, he caught one last glimpse of Lily arranging roses by the back counter, her presence a quiet promise of renewal. Outside, the late afternoon sun was dipping behind city rooftops. Ethan slid behind the wheel of his car, the vase cradled on the passenger seat. For the first time in weeks, he felt something lightly stir, a sense that, while some doors had closed, others were just beginning to open. And midday flowers, he realized, could be the small bright anchors that guide you through your darkest hours. Ethan Carter woke before sunrise each morning, a habit he never anticipated when he first walked into Petal and Stem. He would park his rental Prius on Grand Avenue, cross the quiet street, and slip inside the shop's mint green door. The soft jingle of the bell marked his entrance, and he would pause for a moment beneath the skylight, breathing in the cool, sweet air of freshly cut hydrangeas and morning dew on eucalyptus. He'd find Lily Anderson already at work, her fingers deftly trimming stray stems from a bucket of ranunculus. Her auburn hair tied back in a loose knot, a few wavy tendrils framing her face. As she glanced up and offered him the pair of pruning shears, Ethan felt a spark of anticipation that had nothing to do with sales quotas or company profits. It was simple and pure, the opportunity to learn something new alongside someone he admired. That Tuesday, a rainy drizzle coated the sidewalks, and Lily had set up a table by the front window with potted succulents and hand-thrown ceramic pots. Let's do something different today, she said, her voice warm as steamed tea. Under her guidance, Ethan selected a variety of succulents, jade plants, echeverias, and haworthias, and learned how to layer soil and pebbles in a glazed bowl. When he patted the finishing layer of river stones, Lily smiled and said, "You have a good eye for balance." For a fleeting second, Ethan's insecurities melted away. In that shared moment of creation, he discovered that vulnerability, admitting he didn't know how to arrange plants, could lead to genuine connection. As days turned into weeks, Ethan's visits became more than just floral therapy. He and Lily began to share bits of their lives. He would tell her about the pressures of corporate presentations, the constant drive to outdo last quarter, and the emptiness he felt when he got home to an empty house. In return, Lily spoke of her childhood summers on her grandmother's farm in Oregon, days spent in wildflower meadows where she learned to identify every bloom by sight and scent. They traded favorite recipes for homemade pesto and shared playlists of jazz and indie folk. Each story stitched them closer together, weaving a tapestry of understanding that neither had expected. One afternoon, Lily handed Ethan a small slip of paper. "Saturday night," she said with a mischievous grin. "There's a block party behind the art gallery in Uptown, live music, street food, and a pop-up gallery of local artists. No tickets, just show up. I'll meet you there around 7. Ethan stared at the paper as if it contained some secret code. He hadn't been to a social event outside of corporate mixers in years. His divorce had left him wary of crowds and wary of vulnerability. Yet the warmth in Lily's invitation felt genuine, and he found himself smiling. "I'll be there," he said. When Saturday came, Ethan parked several blocks away and walked under strings of Edison bulbs, where the scent of tamales mingled with the pulsating beat of a drum circle. He spotted Lily beside a towering mural of abstract florals, reds, oranges, and yellows exploding against a deep navy background. She looked radiant in a mustard yellow cardigan over a simple black dress. When she saw him, her eyes lit up like sunrise over a garden. They hugged, and Ethan suddenly felt the weight of solitude slip from his shoulders. They walked together past food trucks serving gourmet sliders and artisanal crepes, their laughter drifting through the open-air venue. A local DJ spun soulful house tracks and Lily grabbed Ethan's hand, pulling him into the crowd. He stumbled at first, uncertain of the rhythm. But she guided him, their bodies moving in sync as they learned each other's tempo. The moment felt suspended, alive with possibility, as if every barrier erected by past pain dissolved under the spell of music and warmth. After dancing under the glow of string lights, they sat on a low concrete ledge, sharing a plate of spicy Korean barbecue tacos. Lily fed Ethan the first taco, smearing a dab of kimchi and avocado onto his lips. He laughed, and she brushed it away with a fingertip, her green eyes twinkling. They talked late into the evening, about the imperfect first attempts at love, about broken engagements and second chances, about the thrill of creativity and the fear of failure. When they finally strolled back through the cobblestone alley, the city felt transformed, as if painted anew by their shared joy. Back at Petal and Stem the next Monday, Lily welcomed Ethan with a bright smile and a cluster of peonies that had arrived fresh from the grower's greenhouse. "These are for you," she said, placing the long stems in his arms. "For all the moments you make brighter." Ethan inhaled their delicate fragrance and found himself speechless. He helped her arrange them in a tall vase, his fingers brushing against hers as they leaned over the counter. A warm flush spread across his cheeks. They spent that morning creating centerpiece prototypes for a bridal workshop Lily was hosting later in the week. The back room glowed with natural light filtering through skylights. Stations were set with ribbons, lace, and buckets of roses, ranunculus, and baby's breath. Under Lily's guidance, Ethan fashioned a small cascading bouquet, roses framed by trailing greenery and interwoven white clematis. When he stepped back, Lily's applause felt like the sweetest accolade, and she reached out to cup his face. "I've been hoping you'd say that." Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the Bay Bridge, Ethan and Lily closed the shop together. In its place was something new, a gentle anticipation for tomorrow, for the next bouquet they'd arrange side by side, the next shared laugh, the next dance beneath city lights. That evening, Ethan lingered in the quiet calm of Petal and Stem after closing on a Friday evening, the overhead skylights dimming as the sun dipped below the rooftops. He and Lily had spent the day prepping for a weekend wedding fair, her laughter echoing among the rose petals, and now the shop stood empty except for them. He watched her organize the leftover blooms. Coral peonies, ivory garden roses, and sprigs of jasmine that filled the air with a soft, honeyed fragrance. His heart thudded as he glanced at the clock, 7:30 p.m., precisely the moment he'd been working toward for weeks. "Everything set for tomorrow?" Lily asked, turning around with a smile that made his pulse race. "Perfect," Ethan replied, voice steady even though his palms were sweaty. He reached behind the counter and flicked a switch. Soft string lights, previously hidden among the rafters, flickered on. The overhead fluorescent snapped off, leaving the shop bathed in a warm, golden glow. Lily's eyes widened in surprise. "What's going on?" she whispered, stepping closer. Ethan took a breath and led her toward the center of the shop. The benches they usually used for workshops had been pushed aside to reveal a circle of flower petals on the floor, rose, jasmine, and lavender, framing a wooden stool draped in ivory linen. On the stool stood a single red rose in a glass vase, lit by a cluster of flickering votive candles. Lily's breath caught. "Ethan?" He slipped from behind her and knelt on one knee inside the petal circle. His heart pounded so loudly, he was certain she could hear it. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Lily's hand flew to her mouth, eyes glistening in the candlelight. "Lily Anderson," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You've taught me more about beauty and resilience than I ever knew I needed. You showed me how to find light in the simplest moments, tending flowers at dawn, dancing under street lamps, and creating bouquets that transform even the roughest edges of life into something breathtaking." He slid the velvet box open. Inside lay a delicate ring, a platinum band set with a single marquise-cut diamond flanked by two petite sapphires. He raised it so it caught the candle glow. "Will you continue to grow with me?" Will you marry me and be my partner in every season? Sunshine and storm, spring blossoms and winter's hush. Tears slipped down Lily's cheeks as she knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she reached for the ring. Yes, she breathed, voice barely above a whisper. 1,000 times yes. Ethan smiled, relief and joy flooding his features. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to sweep her into his arms. The shop, once a place of quiet work, now thrummed with the promise of new beginnings. They stood entwined within the circle of petals, candles flickering around them as the heavy wooden door clicked quietly. Ethan pulled back, eyebrows raised in mock surprise. "We have company," he said. Lily followed his gaze. Behind the door stood a small gathering, Sarah the barista with her herbal tea in hand, Jeff from marketing with a congratulatory grin, and even Marissa, the COO, holding a single sunflower. Ethan's friends and colleagues had slipped in quietly to witness the moment. "Congratulations," they called in unison, filling the shop with warm applause. Lily laughed through her tears, wrapping her free arm around Ethan's waist as they accepted hugs and well wishes. The sunflowers Sarah held swayed gently in the candlelight, a nod from the universe to face the light, together. As the crowd dispersed and the shop returned to its intimate glow, Lily and Ethan shared a quiet kiss among the roses and jasmine. The delicate aroma seemed to bless their promise. Two hearts, rooted in friendship and watered by trust, forever blooming in tandem. Yet nothing could rival the excitement Ethan felt the morning he first saw Lily's smile at the ultrasound clinic. He arrived at her apartment, a single white orchid in hand, a symbol of new beginnings, and drove them both through the sun-drenched streets of Oakland to the River Valley Women's Health Center. Inside, the reception room was quiet but for the gentle hum of distant conversation. Lily, wearing a simple floral sundress that hugged her growing bump, took Ethan's hand as they followed the nurse down the pastel-painted hallway. When they reached the ultrasound suite, the technician, a warm-faced woman named Maria, greeted them with a kindly nod and ushered Lily onto the examination table. Ethan perched on the edge of the chair, heart racing as he watched the monitor flicker to life. "Here we go," Maria said, spreading cool gel across Lily's abdomen. The screen glowed with grainy black and white shapes. Lily squeezed Ethan's hand, her eyes wide with anticipation. Maria navigated the probe with gentle expertise, murmuring, "There's a heartbeat, strong and steady." A tiny flicker pulsed on the screen, and Ethan felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. Then Maria paused, studying the image with a smile. "Well, this is wonderful news. I see not one, but 2 heartbeats." She pointed to 2 distinct flickers side by side. "Yes, you're expecting twins." Ethan's breath caught. He looked at Lily, whose eyes instantly filled with happy tears. A small gasp escaped her lips. "Twins," she whispered, voice trembling with disbelief and delight. "Fraternal, 2 separate sacs, 2 beautiful little babies," Maria confirmed, tapping the screen to highlight each sac. "Everything looks healthy so far. I'll let you both take a moment." Left alone, Ethan rose and moved to kneel beside the examination table. He brushed Lily's hair from her forehead as she pressed a hand to her heart. "Twins," he repeated, voice thick. "We're having twins." She laughed, a joyous, incredulous sound that made his heart soar. "I can't believe it," she said, reaching for his hand and pressing it to her belly. "2 little lives, 1 big adventure." Ethan smiled through tears. "Our own double bouquet," he said softly. 2 unique blossoms made from us." Lily's eyes shone. "I always dreamed of a garden full of flowers. Now we get 2 wildflowers of our own." They shared a gentle kiss, foreheads touching, as the weight of the moment settled into their hearts. Outside, hospital lights flickered through the window, but inside that small room, the future glowed with promise. The announcement spread quickly. That evening, Ethan and Lily hosted an impromptu celebration at Petal and Stem. Lily gently arranged a display of twin-themed bouquets, 2 white roses intertwined with ivory lilies, on a long table beneath the skylight. Ethan hung strings of fairy lights around the shop's entrance, transforming the space into a soft, twinkling haven. Friends and family arrived one by one. Marissa brought champagne. Jeff carried a platter of chocolate-dipped strawberries. Sarah, the barista, delivered steaming cups of lavender vanilla lattes. Lily's grandmother flew in from Oregon, beaming as she embraced her granddaughter. Linda Carter, Ethan's mother, arrived with a hand-knit baby blanket in pale yellow, embroidered with tiny flowers and butterflies. When everyone gathered, Ethan tapped his spoon on a glass to draw attention. The shop fell silent save for the soft shuffle of feet and the glowing candles on the table. Lily stood beside him and pressed a hand to her heart. Marissa raised her glass. To the twins, she toasted, and everyone clinked glasses in a chorus of cheers. Amid the joyous uproar, as golden wine and laughter flowed, Lily and Ethan walked to the back of the shop, where the door to the tiny potting studio stood open. They stepped inside, the scent of soil and greenery welcoming them. Lily leaned against a workbench. "I can't wait to meet them," she said, stroking her belly. "To teach them about flowers, to watch them grow." Ethan nodded, brushing a hand along her arm. "We'll be there for every milestone, first kicks, first giggles, first steps." He rested his free hand over hers. "Twins or not, it'll be perfect." Lily turned to him, eyes shining. "With you, it already is." They held each other in the potting studio's soft lamplight, envisioning two cradles in a nursery painted pastel green, two tiny bouquets on the windowsill, and two sets of footprints on the floor. Outside, the party in the shop carried on, but inside that quiet room, Ethan and Lily cherished the profound miracle that would soon fill their lives with twice the laughter, twice the love, and the promise of new beginnings in pairs. And a chill steamed off the asphalt. He sat for a moment, unbuckling his seatbelt, his pulse heavy with expectation and dread. Today marked their third attempt at in vitro fertilization, and each previous cycle had left them more hollow than before. He reached for his phone, thumb trembling, but there were no new messages from Emma. She was already inside, waiting for him. Emma Hughes perched on a steel bench in the clinic lobby, her legs crossed tightly under her flowing olive-green skirt. She breathed through the ritual deep inhale, hold, exhale, a mantra she'd learned in yoga classes when the IVF process first began. The pale morning light filtered through frosted glass, illuminating her soft features, smooth, determined. A single lock of chestnut hair escaping her low bun. Today she carried both hope and fear in equal measure. Parker stepped into the lobby. His tailored navy blazer melded awkwardly with the sterile setting, and his expensive leather briefcase felt heavy in his hand. He offered Emma a tentative smile, which she returned with a nod. He sat beside her, clasping her hand. "Ready?" he asked. Emma exhaled. "As ready as I'll ever be." The nurse called their names, and they followed her down a hushed corridor. The walls were painted a comforting aquamarine, and soft piano music trickled through speakers above. Parker felt his throat tighten. They reached their exam room, white walls, his eyes never leaving her. Dr. Mariana Lee, a compassionate woman in her 50s with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile, entered in a white coat. "Good morning, Emma." "Parker. How are we feeling today?" Emma managed a small smile. "Nervous, but hopeful." Dr. Lee nodded. "That's understandable. We're transferring 3 thawed embryos today. We've seen from your prior cycles that a higher number can improve chances, but remember, there's a risk of multiples." She gestured at the ultrasound machine. "First, let's check your uterine lining and make sure everything still looks optimal." Emma lay back, knees bent. Parker rose to stand beside the exam table, offering silent reassurance. The cool gel on her lower abdomen prompted a small shiver. The ultrasound probe glided across her skin, and Dr. Lee examined the screen. "Perfect lining, nice and thick. You're good to go." Emma exhaled, gripping Parker's hand. He looked at her, his own heart thundering. Dr. Lee loaded the embryos into the transfer catheter and handed it off with steady hands. Emma winced at the slight pinch, and Parker pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "You're doing great," he murmured. Within minutes, the embryos were in place.
Dr.
Lee confirmed on the screen that they sat snugly in the uterine cavity. "All done," she said, wiping her hands. "I'll see you back here for a blood test in 10 days. Good luck to you both." Emma sat up slowly. Parker guided her gently to stand. They left the sterile room together, heavier in body and spirit. Outside, the rain had paused, leaving glistening droplets on window panes. They walked to the car in a quiet daze, hands still clasped, each step echoing with anxious anticipation. The next 10 days stretched out like an ocean of unknowns. Emma followed Dr. Lee's tailored protocol: bed rest for 24 hours post-transfer, then light walking only, daily progesterone suppositories, no bending or heavy lifting. Parker worked from home. Emma perched on the couch with a heating pad beneath her, reading aloud from light novels while Parker managed his startup's financial reports. The dining room table became their sanctuary, dinner made by candlelight, simple broiled salmon, quinoa salad, and steamed asparagus. No caffeine, no alcohol, only food steamed, uterus-friendly. But as the days passed, Emma's optimism warred with growing dread. Each cramp or twinge sent her spiraling. At night, she lay in bed with her eyes clenched shut, sweat beading on her forehead. Parker would reach for her hand, whispering, "I love you. I'm here." He vowed silently not to collapse under the weight of another negative outcome. The evening before the blood test, Emma's fear climaxed. She wept silently, arms wrapped tight around herself, and Parker held her, rocking her like a child. "I can't do this one more time," she said, tears soaking his shirt. "I'm exhausted physically, emotionally. What if this fails too?" Parker felt guilt stab him. "I'm so sorry," he said, kissing her forehead. "If you want to stop, we will. I'll support you no matter what." Emma looked up, lines of pain etched around her eyes. "I'm terrified of stopping," she admitted. "It feels like giving up on our dream." He swallowed. "Maybe we redefine our dream," he murmured. She nestled against him, and for a moment, they did not speak, just clung to one another, longing for a miracle neither could guarantee. The next morning, they drove back to the clinic in companionable silence. Parker kept his eyes on the road while Emma stared ahead, white-knuckled around her steering wheel until they reached the familiar parking garage. This time they entered with a shared grim resolve. A nurse led them to the lab and drew Emma's blood with the practiced ease of countless morning routines. Parker watched her face, pale yet set with determination. With the blood sample taken, they slipped out into the hallway. No words exchanged. The tension crackled like static between them. 24 agonizing hours later, Dr. Lee called. Parker answered on his cell. Pacing alone in his dark living room, knees knocking. Emma hovered nearby, breath held. "Your HCG level is 4.6, Dr. Lee said gently. Below the threshold for viable pregnancy." Parker felt his heart slam into his chest. He covered the phone's mouthpiece and stared at Emma. The color drained from her face. She slumped to the floor, and Parker sank beside her, arms wrapping around her shaking body. He returned to the call. "Thank you, doctor." He ended the call and watched Emma dissolve entirely, tears, sobs, and raw heartbreak pouring out. He held her through the night, whispering apologies and promises of healing. In the days that followed, Bailey, their golden retriever, nudged Emma's shoulder with a wet nose. She forced a smile to scratch her back. Parker took long walks with her, explaining quietly, "It's okay to mourn." Friends left voicemails he barely listened to. Work deadlines blurred. The condo's blooming herbs went untended. The world outside moved on, unaware of their silent rupture. Finally, one morning, Emma woke with puffy eyes and a new resolve. She sat Parker down at the kitchen table. "I can't keep living like this," she said, voice burying pain. "I have to stop treatment." Parker felt a crushing relief and sorrow in the same heartbeat. "I'll do whatever you need," he promised. "Adoption, foster care, or if you choose a child-free life, I'll walk that path with you." Emma reached across, taking his hand. I love you. Let's take a break from all of this. We'll figure it out together. In that quiet dawn light, they forged a fragile truce with their broken dream. The future remained uncertain. But for the first time in months, they felt something other than despair. The warmth of mutual support, the promise that love could persist even when the pressure to create life had crushed them. They closed the chapter on IVF, not with bitterness, but with the conviction that the next page, whatever it held, would be written hand in hand. Believing their shared heartache and commitment would forge an unbreakable bond. Yet, late one rainy Tuesday evening, exhaustion and the sharp sting of disappointment drove him into the arms of someone else, Mia Tran, a barista at the coffee shop near his startup's offices. And the anticipation of Parker greeting her with warmth had become wistful hope. But Parker was late again. The clock on the mantel ticked past 8:30 p.m., and her phone buzzed with a brief text. Stuck in a late meeting.
Sorry, Eminência.
I'll make it up to you this weekend. Emma's heart pinched. It had become a pattern. Business dinners, impromptu gatherings she wasn't invited to, vague promises of quality time that never materialized. She set her mug aside and sank deeper into the sofa, wrapping herself in a knitted throw.
Outside.
The city lights flickered through the wet window pane. Emma stared at her reflection, whispering a plea for the strength to endure one more day. Meanwhile, Parker sat in a dimly lit private corner of a sleek downtown cafe, the ambient jazz music almost drowned by the rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine. Mia appeared. She was young, vivacious, and unburdened by the heartbreak that pervaded his home life. They talked for hours. Mia listened with earnest interest as he complained about the constant strain at work, the emotional roller coaster of fertility clinics, and Emma's distant silence. She offered sympathy and understanding, a compassionate ear free of judgment. When Parker confided that he felt trapped by the relentless cycle of IVF appointments and their shared desperation to conceive, Mia reached out and touched his hand. His breath caught. The electric warmth of her touch burned away his guilt momentarily, leaving only relief. They laughed softly at a private joke. She leaned in, her eyes flickering with desire. Parker hesitated, the memory of Emma's tear-streaked face flashing through his mind, but the temptation proved too strong. He kissed Mia, first tentatively, then with an intensity born of loneliness and longing. That night, Parker returned home late, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He climbed the stairs quietly, crossed the threshold, and watched Emma asleep on the couch. Her head pillowed on her arm. Guilt hit him like a physical blow. He knelt beside her and brushed a damp strand of hair from her face. She stirred, mumbled, then settled back into unconsciousness. Parker lay down on the floor beside her, staring at the ceiling, consumed by remorse. He vowed not to let this moment define him. He would end it with Mia, confess to Emma, and somehow rebuild the trust he'd shattered. But guilt is a slippery thing. Instead of calling Mia to apologize and sever the affair, Parker continued to see her in stolen moments. Coffee turned into lunch together in a corner booth. Lunch became after-work meetups at a sleek bar near the waterfront. He told himself each encounter would be the last, promising to break away, but each time, when her bright laughter welcomed him, he stayed. Meanwhile, Emma noticed the shift. Parker's excuses grew thinner. Emma scrolled through their shared calendar on the kitchen counter. She saw a block-marked project dinner at 7 p.m. with no explanation. Beneath it, follow-up meeting at 8:30 p.m. My team's taking our major client out. I thought it would be a good look for the company. Emma folded her arms. Your team doesn't have dinners Thursday, and you never take them to that place. She named the upscale cafe by the waterfront. Parker sank onto the sofa. It was a last-minute thing. I'm sorry if I didn't tell you. She sat across from him, eyes fierce. I don't trust your apologies anymore. That night, Emma lay awake, heart hammering. She searched her email archives and found a confirmation. Reservation at Lumen on Thursday, 7 p.m. for 2. Under P. Quinn. Her blood ran cold. She opened the calendar app and saw another entry. Date with Mia scheduled exactly where project dinner had been. Hurt and rage combined into a potent fuel. She snapped screenshots and printed the emails. Her hands shook as she loaded the documents into a manila envelope. Sleep eluded her until dawn. Over the weekend, Emma confronted Parker with a folder on the coffee table. She laid it open. Screenshots of texts between Parker and Mia, flirtatious at first, then intimate. Reservation confirmations. A photo of Parker in Mia's arms in that cafe. She watched his face pale. "Why?" she whispered. Parker closed his eyes, tears spilling. "I made a terrible mistake. I've been so lost, Em. I never meant to hurt you." Emma stood. "Pack a bag," she said, voice brittle. "I'm filing for divorce." He lunged after her. "Emma, please." She slung the folder at him. "Save it. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. We'll split everything fairly. I won't fight you." The lawyer's office was a sterile corridor of cream walls and beige carpeting. Emma sat rigid in the plush armchair, Parker across from her, both of them drained of color. Their divorce attorney, Ms. Carraway, explained the process. Petition filing, temporary orders, mediation for asset division, and the final decree. Parker's hands trembled as he signed the initial papers. Emma watched him passively, arms crossed, refusing to meet his eyes. In the weeks that followed, Parker moved into a downtown apartment, a stark one-bedroom with big windows but soulless, white walls. He spent nights pacing, replaying every moment he'd chosen Mia's comfort over Emma's trust. He canceled the slate of after-work dates with Mia, her calls unanswered as he grappled with guilt. She texted him, "Where are you?" He left her on read. Emma, meanwhile, reclaimed her independence. She packed her art supplies into a vintage backpack, painted new canvases in her living room bathed in afternoon light, and spent weekends hiking Discovery Park alone. She cried, raged, and healed, inscribing her pain into abstract canvases of blues and grays that she titled Rupture and Exile. One evening, Parker returned to No Valley on a tenuous visitation schedule, hoping to retrieve a box of documents. Emma met him at the door. She wore a flowy navy dress and looked unapologetically serene. "I've packed your things," she said quietly, guiding him inside. He lingered in the hallway, breath caught in his throat. The apartment was warm and familiar, the orchid on the windowsill, the mismatched plates still in the cabinet, the faint scent of basil from the herb garden. He held out a cardboard box. He choked. "I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it." Emma took the box from him. "You broke something I can't mend. I need to move on." He swallowed, voice barely a whisper. "I understand." She nodded and closed the door without another glance, leaving him alone in the foyer. Parker left Seattle the next morning for a month-long business trip. He used the time to reflect. He ended things definitively with Mia, not wanting to taint her future with his betrayal. He sought therapy for the first time, confessing his failings and unraveling the root causes, his own immaturity under pressure, his fear of emotional intimacy. He began to write letters to Emma, unsent, pouring out apologies and gratitude for their years together. Emma, meanwhile, found solace in community. Fellow teachers rallied around her. Her students painted get-well cards and wrote messages of support on poster board. "You're brave. You deserve happiness. Thank you for teaching us to create." She organized a gallery show at a local cafe, featuring her Rupture series alongside works by other artists who had navigated loss. The opening night was packed. Friends, colleagues, even Linda Carter made the trip up from Marin County. Emma stood before her canvases, fielding questions and basking in the understanding that beauty could be born from heartbreak. By the end of the month, both Parker and Emma had emerged from their respective journeys of pain with new clarity. Parker ended his trip early, returning to Seattle with a renewed commitment to integrity and self-awareness. He found Emma at a local art fair, her hands and apron streaked with paint as she taught children to finger-paint wildflowers. He watched her from a distance, marveling at her grace and resilience. She glanced up, spotted him, and offered a polite nod, a gesture of acknowledgement. not reconciliation. Parker returned the nod, a bittersweet smile on his lips. He understood their lives had irrevocably diverged. As he walked away, Parker felt both sorrow and relief. He had lost the love of his life through his own missteps, but he had also gained a profound lesson that trust, once broken, could never be reclaimed fully. He resolved to carry Emma's memory with honor, to become a man worthy of the second chance at authenticity he had promised himself in therapy. Emma turned back to her canvas, dipped her brush in cerulean paint, and pressed it to white fabric, creating a new layer of color and hope. In the vibrant brushstroke, she found the courage to keep moving forward, her heart bruised but unbowed, her spirit open to whatever grace awaited beyond the remnants of loss. The weeks following the divorce were a haze of gray for Emma Hughes. The familiar rhythms of her life, morning coffee on the balcony, art lessons in her sunlit studio, evening walks along the waterfront, carried on, but her heart felt hollow. She immersed herself in teaching, encouraging her high school students to express the spectrum of human emotion through color and form. Yet each brushstroke she guided them through brought her back to the painful void of her own canvas, a life once shared, now blank in certain corners. One crisp Saturday morning, Emma arrived at Madrona Park for her routine jog. She paused at the shore, inhaling the sharp breeze off Lake Washington. Turning her back to the water, she almost collided with Josh Carter, the physics teacher from her alma mater, who was walking his golden retriever, Benny. "Emma," he said in surprise, stepping aside. "Hey, you're out early." She offered a wan smile. "Needed fresh air. How's Benny today?" Benny bounded forward, tail wagging, and Emma knelt to scratch behind his ears. The simple warmth of canine affection broke the knot in her chest. "Thanks, Josh," she murmured. He had volunteered to meet her once a week after school. No agenda, just companionship. They settled on a weathered bench overlooking the water, Benny at Emma's feet. Josh handed her a steaming mug of chai latte from the cafe on the corner. "Thought you could use this," he said softly. Emma wrapped her hands around the cup's heat, and a small spark of comfort flickered inside her. They sat in companionable silence, watching sailboats drift past the pier. Finally, Josh spoke. "I know things have been tough." His voice was gentle, without intrusion. "I'm here to listen if you ever want to talk." Emma brushed a loose strand of hair back from her face. "I appreciate that more than you know. I used to love teaching so much, then it all felt like background noise." She exhaled, tears pricking her eyes. "Now every day feels like a reminder of what I lost." Josh turned to face her, his blue-gray eyes clear with compassion. "You didn't lose you, Emma. You're still that gifted artist and teacher everyone admires. Sometimes life takes away a chapter, but the story isn't over." He paused. "I'd like to be part of the next chapter, as a friend, if nothing else." Emma managed a nod. A steady ache in her chest loosened as she realized someone cared enough to stay by her side without demands. "Thank you, Josh," she whispered. "That means the world." Over the following weeks, Emma and Josh fell into a nurturing rhythm. They met for weekend art walks at the Seattle Art Museum, their reflections blending on rain-speckled glass. They shared homemade dinners, Emma's mushroom risotto, Josh's grandmother's meatloaf recipe, eating by candlelight in her cozy kitchen. Josh helped her hang new canvases in her apartment's gallery nook, encouraging her to showcase her Rupture series at a local cafe. Their laughter returned, gentle and healing. On a mid-August afternoon, Emma arrived at Josh's apartment to find him on the balcony, sketchpad in hand, outlining the Cascade Mountains. He greeted her with a warm hug and offered her a cup of iced mint tea. "I sketched something for you," he said, tapping the pad. Emma tilted her head, seeing a delicate pencil drawing of a hummingbird hovering before an open window, a silent metaphor for arrival and hope. Beneath it, in his handwriting, were the words, "New beginnings." Her breath caught, and she pressed her palm to her mouth. "Josh, it's beautiful." He shrugged modestly. "Just a small reminder that life always finds a way in." He paused, meeting her eyes. "How are you feeling, really?" Emma traced the hummingbird's slender beak with her fingertip. "Braver," she admitted. "Because of you." She set the sketch aside and leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for everything." That evening, Josh returned the favor by encouraging Emma to take a solo road trip to Vancouver to clear her mind. When he dropped her at her car, he pressed a small leather journal into her hands. For sketches, thoughts, poems, anything. "So when you look back, you'll see how far you've come." Emma smiled, tears brimming. "You've given me so much." She held his gaze. "I don't know what's next, but I feel ready." 2 weeks later, back in her Washington Park kitchen, Emma held an envelope with the return address of River Valley Women's Health Center. Her heart fluttered. She'd received enough of these before, blood test results for IVF, but this time felt different. Josh stood behind her at the sink, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Go on," he urged softly, reading her expression. Emma set down her mug and slid the envelope open. Inside was a handwritten note from Dr. Lee. "Congratulations, Emma. Your HCG level is 152. You are pregnant." Beneath it was a printed sonogram image showing a tiny gestational sac nestled in her uterus. Time seemed to stop. Emma's fingers trembled around the paper. She turned slowly to Josh, eyes shining.
I'm pregnant."
The words felt like a sunrise breaking through cloud. Josh's face lit with joy. He drew her into an embrace, kissing her forehead. "That's the best news," he whispered, voice thick. "I'm so happy for you." Emma pressed the note against her heart. "I didn't think this day would ever come." She closed her eyes, letting the emotion wash over her. She pictured late-night feedings and first steps, cradling her baby in arms that once held only heartbreak. They hurried to text a picture of the sonogram to Linda Carter, who replied instantly with a string of celebratory emojis and overjoyed. Emma dialed her Aunt Rosa, whose excited tears crackled over the line. Then she shared the news with her students at school, carefully chosen 11th graders whose art projects lined the hallway, and watched their faces light up in wonder at their teacher's miracle. Later that evening, Emma and Josh sat on her balcony, the city lights twinkling below. Josh poured them each a glass of sparkling water. "To new beginnings," he toasted, and Emma clinked her glass against his. As they gazed out over the water, Emma felt the entire arc of her journey, the anguish and betrayal, the healing friendship, and now the promise of life itself, woven into a tapestry more vibrant than any canvas. With Josh by her side and a new life growing within her, Emma embraced the unknown future with a fearless heart, ready for every brushstroke that lay ahead. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistery Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.